So picture this. You are basking in the glow of less financial stress. You've got an emergency fund in place. You're actively saving for upcoming expenses and purchases, and you've paid off a ton of debt. I mean, think of that. No more stress or worry. Life is good right now. And how amazing would that feel? And you know what? For most of us, the only thing that's keeping us from that kind of life is our money habits. So stick around. Today, we're going to share tips about how we broke free from our bad money habits so that you can do the same and experience the same kind of financial freedom we all do. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast with Brad Nelson. Brad and his co-hosts experience the anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck before learning the fundamentals of financial success. They are now on a mission to empower regular people to pay off their debt for good and enjoy happier, less stressful lives. Keep listening for inspirational interviews, tips, tricks, and practical advice to gain financial freedom.
Hey, how's everyone doing today? As you guys know, I am Brad Nelson, founder of the Debt Free Dad podcast. I paid off $45,000 of debt and have been debt-free now for more than 10 years. And I've also been fortunate enough to help thousands of other people save and pay off tens of millions of dollars over the years with the work that we do here at Debt Free Dad.
And I'm Amber Taylor, and I have actually paid off $54,000 in just 20 months. We've been living debt-free for over 5 years, and I've been working with Debt Free Dad for 7 years now.
And I'm Katie Hatfield. I am still on my journey to debt freedom, and I have paid off in 5.5 years $143,965 in debt and saved a lot more than that. And I'm still working on it.
I'm Ryan Nelson. I'm Brad's older brother. After watching my brother become debt-free, thinking he was crazy doing it, I jumped on the bandwagon, and I have paid off about $160,000 in debt and am now debt-free.
So guys, as I mentioned in the intro, we are going to be sharing some great tips, hopefully to help you break some bad money habits, things that we've gone through as we got out of debt. But after listening to this episode, if you want to take this a step further, we got an awesome free workshop that's going to give you a lot of great getting started tips, some great worksheets to get started with, and we're going to be sharing some more information about that later on in the show here today. So guys, we're talking all about breaking bad behaviors, bad habits, bad choices, and I got to say, I think this is probably one of the more commonly overlooked areas, I think, for a lot of people. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking it's income, I don't make enough money. And I mean, you guys know as well as I do, I mean, going through this process yourselves, but also seeing all the people that we've helped over the years is that for a lot of people, you know, sometimes it's just changing your habits, your behaviors, your choices with your money and going at it with a different mindset. And it's amazing the difference that can make. In fact, I was on a podcast as a guest here today before recording this episode, and this conversation came up with this, is that, you know, how important is behaviors, habits, and choices in the overall grand scheme of your finances? And me personally, I mean, I think this is where it all starts. I mean, would you guys agree or disagree based on what you guys know now?
100%.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, when I was in debt, I mean, I spent a lot of years, pretty much most of my adult life until I decided to get out of debt, most of my adult life, looking for anyone and everything else to blame for the problem. And it was just gave me a lot of excuses to keep being irresponsible with the money I had. So yeah, I mean, I think for me, this episode hits home because this is like one of the key things to figuring your finances out. If you figure this out, you're going to be amazed at what you can do.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I will say, I mean, this seems to be like a regular pattern on, you know, TikToks and Reels is a lot of this, you know, especially with inflation and the expenses the way that they are. And we've talked about this. We've reacted to TikToks and things on this podcast, and you know, pointing the finger at everybody else, or it's this whole idea that somebody is going to eventually come to save us. And that the reality is nobody's coming to save you. The government's not going to save you. You got to essentially learn to save yourself. And I think a big part of where that happens is being willing to look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I need to take responsibility and accountability for the stuff that I can control in my life. And I got to stop, like you said, Ryan, pointing the finger at everybody else and saying that that's the problem, and then not being willing to look at ourselves. Because if you look at a lot of these people talking about how, you know, they just don't either have enough money or they, you know, and nowhere in there do any of them ever say like, well, part of this is my fault too, right? And none of those videos share that. It's always pointing at everything else, and that's the reason for my problems. But the reality is, if you look at the statistics of, like, for instance, ones that we've shared is, 63% of people can't handle a $500 emergency expense without going into debt. Well, that was the same percentage back in 2017 that it is today in 2020. Well, it was last year, 2023, but 6-7 years later, and we've been through COVID. Now we're going through inflation and all that. And the reality is those numbers haven't changed. So what's the real issue for most people? And again, I'm not saying everybody, but for a lot of people, I think this is where a lot of it stems from.
And I know I have tried to pay off debt on my own before I joined the program here. And I would just keep sliding back into the same habits after, I paid off $22,000 in debt on my own. That's great. And then life happened. And then I would just go back to swiping my card for everything. But now it's like, stop, think about what you're spending. Is this a want? Is this a need? Just all kinds of different behaviors and mindsets, not wandering the aisles of Target every other day. All those kind of things add up very quickly.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that, Katie, when we get to that point, is asking, what was the thing that helped you change that habit? Because I'm sure there's a lot of other people listening to this that have that issue too. But first, before we get there, guys, I just want to share one or two. What were some of your worst financial habits in your opinion? Just real quick before we get into some of these tips here today.
I would probably have to say ours was just eating out. I would make like good sales one night and I was like, yeah, let's go eat out.
Let's celebrate, right? Celebrate.
Yeah, and I'd be like, I'm on my way home. Let's go, get ready. And we'd go out and we'd like blow half the money I made. Like, what the heck?
Tastes so good though.
But it did.
Yes, I had the same. The money is in my pocket and it's burning a hole. Let's go shopping. We have to buy something. We have to do something. And it was always just a want. It was never like a thought out plan.
Yeah, I would say our worst habit that really probably was a majority of our debt was we would never admit it back then, but we lived for everyone else's opinions. And so we spent money to prove and to show people that we were doing well. And that habit and that way of living is just what, it made us buy houses and cars and take vacations and do all sorts of things that we really couldn't afford. But it was for that, wow, they must be doing really well.
Yeah. I would say for us and for me, mostly it was just boredom, fear of missing out. Obviously, a lot of eating out, like Amber. That's a big one for a lot of people. And just honestly, like I think you mentioned it too, Kate, is just not being intentional, just being lazy with it. Not really paying attention. I think is really what it comes down to, is just not really giving it its full attention that it needed. So, Katie, you mentioned some of the things that you did, like you stopped aimlessly wandering around Target, and you mentioned starting to make a plan and have some goals. So that's one of our first tips here, is I think one of the best ways to start improving your habits is to start creating some either smaller or bigger goals that, from a financial standpoint, that you actually believe in and that you want to achieve. Because I think having those short-term and long-term goals can help prevent you from going after some of those senseless purchases that you might make to emotionally make yourself feel good in the moment, because you're working towards something bigger. Can you talk about that from your viewpoint? What helped you?
Yeah, definitely writing down that first budget and putting what my income was versus my expenses every month, and just how completely off balance that was like, okay, I need to make a change and I need to make it yesterday, not now. Like, this has to be totally different. And then really the waiting 24 hours instead of impulse purchasing, buying every last thing that I saw at Target in the dollar bins when you walk in, this bag of cookies, whatever. Like, I just was more conscious of where my money was going and just going, okay, I don't need this. I don't need to spend money on this. What is this going to get me? And now definitely being so close to paying off my debt, seeing that final light at the end of the tunnel, and having goals of being a snowbird and traveling and all kinds of things that I'm going to be able to do with that money that is currently going to a lot of credit card companies and all of that.
Right. Have you found, though, as you went further along, it became did it become easier to start saying no to a lot of that stuff because you started making a lot of your progress that you made?
Yes, I like Ryan said, I don't care what other people think anymore. I don't care about the labels on my clothes or my car or anything like that. I'm doing life for me, not for everybody else. And it is just like, okay, put your blinders on and just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned that in a previous episode that we just did about the whole idea of defining enough, and that, it takes time to break away from what everybody wants you to have, right? Or what they say you need to have. And I mentioned, like, there's no replacing the journey of what happens. Like, when you go on a journey of getting out of debt, it's amazing. Not only the habits, the behaviors, and choices that improve, but just your overall mindset. It's just like you go from this being highly sensitive to what other people think about you when it comes to your stuff. At least I did. And you just mentioned it too, Katie, to not giving a crap at all. And you can't just tell someone, just stop caring. It's something you learn how to do as you take control of your finances. We see it all the time with our members. It's fascinating.
Well, I found for us, like, we really realized it when we started paying off our debt. And then we were like, this isn't helping me even get closer to, that house that we want to get into. Like, buying these things isn't helping us get there. And I think that's what helped us say no a lot, was because we realized that buying these extra things or going out to eat this extra time isn't going to help us reach the goal that we made and we set. Now we sway a little bit more. So it's easy to go back into bad habits, though. That's definitely one thing.
Yeah. I want to share these next three areas real quick just together, and we can kind of talk about them as a group. But number two here is to learn to live within your means. And one of the things that we talk about all the time on this podcast is to go back and look at your spending, to become aware of your spending. This is an area where you're going to see a lot of these behaviors, habits, and choices really showing up in your life. So go back, print out the last 3 to 6 months of your bank statements, your credit card statements, anywhere you're spending money, PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, any of these places, and really start looking at where's our money going? Because in a lot of cases, for a lot of people that we have listened to this show, you do have the means to start making better progress. It's just that we're not being intentional with where that money's going, right? And then number 3 here is, if you can't pay cash, you can't afford it. Like, just put that rule in your mind. If you can't pay cash, you can't afford it. And how much energy, stress, emotion you would save yourself of these purchases that just have you emotionally charged to buy them. Like, it's just a simple rule. If you can't pay cash, you can't afford it. Just take a break from debt for a while until you get your finances in a better place. And then last but not least is, you can't really borrow your way out of getting out of debt. You really have to get focused on taking control of your income, living on a budget, living below your means. And how can you use that current income to start, say, building your emergency fund, pay down the debt that you have? And the reality is as your habits, your behaviors, and choices improve, along with some of these steps, it becomes a lot easier over time as you work them.
Yeah, and I think when you say learn to live within your means, I think a lot of people, for us, if you would have told me this years ago when we were in debt, I would probably argue the fact that, like, I have all these bills and I can pay all these bills, and at the end of the month, I don't have any money left over. So therefore, I'm living within my means. That I think when you say that, I think a lot of people think, well, I can afford all my bills, so I'm living within my means. And for us, though, like, we weren't saving for retirement. We didn't have, like, basic insurance things. There was a lot of things we weren't doing. And so, like, once we started doing those things and taking a look at it and say, really within our means, like, how do we really fund not just our monthly expenses, but all of these other goals we have for the future? It really kind of makes you rethink, like, what does my means mean? Because for us, it just meant, like, I could spend as much as my income was. And I think we just had to really redefine that for ourselves. It doesn't mean that. But I think there's a lot of people out there that think that as long as I can afford all my monthly bills, then I'm living within my means.
And when I was living within my means, that also meant I was charging things that I couldn't afford to credit cards, and that was just normal. I just wasn't paying off my bill every month, which is what gets you deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. So I was the queen of I'm totally drawing a blank. Overdraft fees at the bank. Like,
I remember that. Oh, I remember that.
I don't even remember what it's called because I haven't had one in so many years.
I
but
remember, yeah. I remember.
6
I
months.
remember that in that first year. It was like, it was the first year, right? That was one of your big wins. It's like, I don't have any more overdraft fees.
Yeah, because like 6 months before I joined Roots, I had over $500-$600 in overdraft fees. My very good friend worked at my bank, and she's like, "Have you looked at how much you overdraft?" And I'm like, "Nope, but I know I don't have any money in my account, and they just keep taking more money out of it." And yeah,
Wait. You have a friend that knew what was going on. How weird was that conversation?
Well, so she is my best friend, and she doesn't work at that bank anymore, but I also don't go to that bank anymore. So it was, I had asked her, I was so far into debt, I had asked her to throw $20 of her money into my account while she was at work. So it would float until the next day when I knew my check was going to deposit, or else I was going to be overdrafted again. And she's like, "Girl, would you sit down and look at this?" And I'm like, "I have been avoiding looking at that and facing that problem. So thanks for pointing that out to me."
Right. And look where you are today. It's incredible. Yep.
Yes.
So,
all on a single income. I don't think I said that before.
Yeah.
All on my own.
Yeah, single income. So it's possible. And I think for a lot of our members and people that have gone through and listened to our podcast, when they get to that point of no more overdraft fees, it's such a relieving feeling. Just, I mean, not only are you struggling to begin with, but then you're getting feed to death because of how you're mismanaging your money. It's like, man, it just never ends, right? So next area is obviously looking at your distractions. And I think this is another reason why we want you to go back and look at, your spending habits. Where has your money actually been going, and getting really real with yourself about where that money's been going. And then figuring out, okay, how can we cut out some of these distractions? How can we make some changes, right? So easy things like, things that get you to spend money. I mean, social media is huge right now. I mean, obviously if you're anywhere on TikTok Shop and all that stuff, I mean, they make it so incredibly easy now just to spend money. And with social media, it's like instantly right there, and they make it so easy just to pay now, right? And so it's so easy just to click a few buttons and you've spent money in all likelihood on things that you weren't even planning on spending that money on. And all of a sudden this thing just shows up and you're like, I got to have it, right? So you got to start thinking about those things. Like, how can we cut back on those distractions? So one of the easy things is maybe you take your payment methods off your phone. Maybe make it harder for yourself to spend that money. There's a couple funny Facebook posts I saw about this. Like, I was all about buying that thing I saw on Amazon until I had to get myself off the couch to go to my wallet and get my credit card out. Sometimes it's just that little thing, that little extra step that you put in there that prevents you from spending a lot of extra money. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's so true.
I will literally not. My purse can be like on the other side of the room, and I'm like, no, too much effort. So.
So I guess having the card memorized is not as good. Like,
no bueno.
I have no other excuse. It's all on me, guys.
Like, I have the payment saved, but not the 3 digits on the back. So if I have to remember that and go and find it, no, sorry, not happening.
That is fascinating. I've never memorized any of my debit cards ever.
I use it often.
Oh my gosh, so do I, but I've never memorized it.
It just happened. It wasn't intentional.
I guess I've never thought about that before.
I had to unsubscribe from like marketing emails and stuff and get myself out of buy and sell groups. That was a big thing for me. Even now I'll catch myself, going through those buy and sell groups and like not even needing something. I'm like, oh, look at this.
Or even text messages over like the holidays. Holy cow.
Oh my gosh. The text messages were wild. Yeah.
Yeah. You tend to forget like how many of those maybe you signed up for until they all start coming through. And it's like, who are these? Well, I don't remember this. Right. But it's all of those little distractions for sure. And then last but not least, it's really finding, and Katie, you kind of mentioned this, and both you and Amber have gone through Roots now as members. It's really finding an accountability and support system for really fostering better habits and behaviors. Because the reality is, you look at the majority of people who are living paycheck to paycheck, it is the majority of the population. And it's not to like bash the people around you in your life, but you got to be really careful about what type of, people you're following or what type of social influence these people are having on your life. So make sure you're finding a good accountability and support system, getting yourself around people that are wanting to improve their finances, because the reality is most people don't really have an active approach to improving their finances. And they're not really going after or actively looking for ways to, improve. So what's going to happen is you're going to be tempted by a lot of their behavior and what they do. Like, for instance, last minute time, like, how many of us can relate to, you're at work, you brought your lunch, but then the coworkers all to say, you know what, it sounds like a great idea to go to such and such today, right? And how many times do we all, okay, let's just go. But that wasn't a part of your budget, and that wasn't a part of your plan. And so, I mean, there's lots of these different scenarios that can pop up, whether it be, concerts, going out to eat, or, unexpected shopping trips, or, just things like that. And they can pop up like crazy. So having a support and accountability system to keep you accountable to your plan is only going to help you to stay on the path that you're on. But without that, I mean, we are terrible accountability partners to ourselves. We like to say that we're doing really good, but the reality is we like to lie to ourselves a lot too. So you got to be really careful with that.
I had the best accountability partner. Not. My husband and I are really good at going the opposite direction. Should we do this? No. Yeah, but we should. So like, it is good to have an outside accountability partner if you have a spouse or significant other that will help you make excuses.
Spender and the saver.
Oh. Just do it.
Oh, it's so funny.
Well, and I think, the accountability side is just, we live in such a society. I mean, one of the main reasons I love doing this podcast is personal finance is one of those weird things to this day. Like if I went to people and we were doing this right now and said, hey, I'm looking for a way to get healthier and exercise, I'd have 100 people give me tips and here's what I do and here's what you should do. Or if I said, hey, I want to, quit smoking, I'd probably have a bunch of people cheering me on. You can do it. But if I say, hey, I want to get out of debt and not be stuck in payments, the amount of people that are going to look at you and be like, that's stupid. Everybody has debt. What are you doing? That's just dumb. Nobody does that. Like, it's just all of this negative reinforcement from most of society when you choose that. And I think that's why it's so important to get around like-minded people. I remember when my wife and I started telling people that's what we were doing. We had one set of friends that were supportive, but everybody else was just like almost took offense to it. Like, you're doing what? It's like your own, I don't know how to describe it, but it is in some ways a lonely road of getting out of debt, because so many people will not on purpose. I mean, Brad, you got out of debt. I was there. I was that person that was like, what are you doing? We all have debt. I've got a car payment. What are that's just, nobody does that. I was that negative person, but that's just the life I lived. And it wasn't until I got to the other side where it's like, you just need people who are going to help you and cheer you on. And you got to, I think that's just why accountability is so important, because there's going to be a lot of people that are, like you said, let's go to lunch. And you're going to say, it's not my budget. And they're all going to look at you like, what are you talking about?
Right.
What do you mean budget?
Who does those? Come on. Right. Nobody does that. Let's go.
Exactly.
Have fun. You only live once. Come on. Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right.
I know as a single person, it was really important to find roots and the group. And I had been following Brad and being like, all right, what are you doing? Because you just paid off debt and I have all of this debt and I need to look at what you're doing. So money is a taboo topic. You don't talk to your friends, your family, anything, because you don't want to be ashamed or embarrassed of, okay, my life looks good on the outside, but how did I get into this literally a financial dumpster fire, all on my own? It was my fault, but it's not something you want to necessarily admit to people that you're close to, and definitely not ask for help. So finding this group of other people who are in the same boat and going through the same journey was extremely helpful.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it doesn't have to be anything super fancy either. I mean, obviously we mentioned roots a lot on this podcast, but it could just be this podcast that helps you kind of get started and have support and accountability. It could be a person. It could be getting yourself into a Facebook group. Like we have the free Life Without Payments Facebook group, and you can get started there. And the cool thing about getting yourself around these different people in these communities is a lot of these places they're having different conversations than your normal social influence or social circle of friends and family. especially if a lot of them are struggling with their finances too. And what that does for you is it gets you outside those circles, that they have different conversations. It gets you to have different light bulbs that go off and to challenge your normal thinking. And the more of that you can challenge, especially when it comes to this paycheck to paycheck life, and the more you can start adopting some of these ideas and some of these things that other people are doing, they're having success with it. I mean, it only helps you, so get outside and get that accountability, get that support, find your people, essentially, that'll help you along the way. And then last but not least, guys, and we do this a lot on this podcast. In fact, we do it every single podcast, is we celebrate wins. And I think that's a big part in fostering improvement of your behaviors, habits, and choices, because you've got to take a minute and recognize like what the results are from all of the hard work that you're putting in. I mean, that's only going to continue to motivate you and keep you going. We make such a big deal about it here. And again, it kind of goes back to what you said about money and, money being a very taboo topic, and it's not a very, cool thing to do. And for a lot of us, we kind of like hold those wins tight because we don't really have anyone to celebrate them with. But when you get yourself into that community, it's an amazing thing to do. Like when you get that first emergency fund bill, you get those first few credit cards paid off, or, it's a great feeling to be able to celebrate that with other people who are working on the same thing. It only encourages you to keep moving forward and keep getting better.
And you just had, was it Mary? Or Michelle?
Yeah, Michelle.
That she would celebrate like her $5 wins, and now she's paid off $150,000. And that's just, you have to celebrate the little wins, not just the big wins too. And that's super important and super motivating to keep going and tracking your progress.
All right, guys. So if you want to break free from financial stress, focus on your money habits. The majority of your overall success will be found in improving your behaviors around money. And by putting in that hard work now, you'll quickly see that you too can kick the paycheck to paycheck life, have less financial stress and debt, and a heck of a lot more money. So the Totally Awesome Debt Freedom Planner is helping so many people make consistent progress with their finances. Whether that be building emergency funds, paying down bills, budgeting, tracking paydays, saving up for larger purchases, goal planning, and planning for those irregular yearly expenses that always seem to catch you by surprise. Now, the Debt Freedom Planner will help you take the stress out of managing your money. And if the thought is running through your mind, hey, I just need to have a simple tool to get my finances together, this planner is perfect for you. Head over to therealdebtfreedad.com, click on the Debt Freedom Planner in the menu at the top of the page, and order your Debt Freedom Planner today.
Let's talk about that, baby. Let's talk about your money. Let's talk about all the good things, all the bad things that may be. Let's talk about that.
And that sound means it's time for the celebrations of the show. First, we have Tiffany, all bills paid and on track to save close to $700 by the end of the month. $400 of that will go towards my emergency fund, and that will be complete. And I can finally start crushing my snowball.
Yeah, way to go, Tiffany. That is awesome. Up next is Mary. Mary says, working on my budget, breaking down expenses in a way that I have never done before. And I also ate lunch at the office all week. There you go, Mary. Congratulations. Great wins.
And Georgianne just joined, so that's a huge win. And she wrote down all her debt and was shocked. I can understand that feeling for sure. And to say the least, she is 62, working full time, and hoping she can pay off over $100,000 in debt by retirement. And that doesn't include her car or her house. So she has a big mountain to climb and is praying that this will stick.
And lastly, we have Leanne. I didn't order takeout all this week, and I ate the food that I had at home.
Yeah, that is awesome, Leanne. Congratulations. And as always, congratulations to all of you guys who are taking a stand for your financial life and are wanting better. We get that getting out of debt isn't easy, but with our help and with your consistency and discipline, we promise you this will be some of the best work that you guys do in your entire life. And as I mentioned, we do have that Life Without Payments workshop. So if you're looking to get started and you want to improve habits, behaviors, and choices, learn how to budget, learn how to build your emergency fund, learn some of the best methods to pay down your debt, head over to debtfreedad.com, click on the free Life Without Payments workshop under the tools and courses menu. And this is going to give you everything to get started with your debt-free journey. Hey, thanks for joining us today, and we will see you guys on next week's episode.
Thanks for listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast. Connect with us on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search Debt Free Dad. If you found value in today's episode, please leave us a rating and review. We so appreciate it. For resources, show notes, and links mentioned in today's show, visit debtfreedad.com. Catch you next week.